All right, so we're live. How do I invite someone? All right, hit the guest button. All right. We're going to be talking to that shepherd girl. As soon as she can get on here, I'm going to try to bring her in. Invite. Hey,
Right here.
I can see you. Hang on.
Yay.
Something
Okay.
happened.
Okay, cool.
I can barely see you. I'm trying to figure out. Let's see. How do I blow this up? There we go. All right, there we go.
Well, now I'm the bigger one.
What's that?
I said, am I the bigger one now?
Yeah, you are on my screen.
On mine too. Okay, cool.
So I'll introduce myself. My name is Brad Harden. I only know you as that shepherd girl. So what is your real name?
Jessie. So I'm Jessie DeBold as of right now, but the name will change. But yeah, I'm located in Arizona too, by the way.
Whereabouts in Arizona?
Just outside of Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, all right. So we talked about like kind of defining some terms when we started up. Mm-hmm. So we both kind of agree that prey drive is, chase, catch, kill, consume, stuff like that. Sorry, my kid just came in. He got stung by a wasp. So hang on a second. Sorry about that. Prey drive, chase, catch, kill, consume, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then when I say defense drive, I'm referring to a dog's natural desire to protect like itself or a resource, right? And for me, and a lot of people that agree with me, defense comes from fear. Mm-hmm. Right? The dog fears something being taken, therefore he must protect. So that coming from fear is, for me, it's an emotional thing. And when you see dogs working in defense, and I'm sure you can see the difference when you see dogs working in defense. It's the barks are more, they're more guttural. There's more teeth. The threat display is bigger, right? Because they're trying to intimidate, right? Now, with predatory aggression and prey, the dogs still have to run down, chase down their prey and kill it, right? And most times that prey is not going to just take it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the dog's got to have some gumption to finish the job, or it goes hungry, so to speak.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
So with predatory aggression, sorry to stop you. I guess that's the first time I've heard that term specifically. I've always thought I'm not sure if you've done any form of martial arts before.
Yep.
But with martial arts, right? It's when you're sparring with a partner, whether you're whatever kind of martial arts we're doing, right? When you're sparring with a partner, you may be the aggressor in the situation, but you also have to defend against incoming attacks. Does that mean that you're experiencing a high level of fear for those attacks? No, because you're confident in your ability to overcome those. So it's a lower level of stress, right? I don't know that I would like there's some level of fear to that because it's self-preservation, but I don't think it comes from when we think of defense as a like real fear, right? A dog backing into a corner defense. I think it's a little bit different because it is more of an aggression, but I think that that terminology kind of fits that idea a little bit better because I always just kind of categorize that as defense because in my mind, in a real fight, you're defending against threats, right? Even though you don't see them as high level threats, they're still a threat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of understand. Just because you're countering doesn't mean it's defense in nature or defensive in nature. Even though you're defending yourself by countering the other person's move, right? There's a difference between sparring in a gym, though, and in a real fight out in the street where there's glass, knives, weapons, concrete, other people, etc. Mm-hmm. And think about the emotional state that a person gets in when they're in a real fight versus when they're just goofing around on the mats with their buddies.
Exactly.
Right? So there's for me is the big difference, right? I can go on the mats and I can roll around with my friends. I've done martial arts since the 90s. I'm an old guy.
Cool. It helps in these scenarios to understand martial arts, I feel like.
Yeah. So because I've always looked at bite work as just another form of self-defense, right? But I can roll around and spar with my buddies in the gym. My heart is not in the same place as if I get into a real fight in a bar when I used to be a bouncer. You know what I mean? One, there's real danger, and you know that there's real danger for injury or death.
Exactly.
And the other one, look, nothing bad's going to happen because I trust the guy that I'm sparring with. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I put the suit on for my dog, it's no different than when I'm in the gym sparring with a friend.
And I get that, and I'm sure that there's some level of when you're introducing the suit, it's not just always on you all the time, right? And I know for Mondio Ring, you'll see a lot of, in the videos you tagged me in, it's a lot of half suit pictures, right? It's sometimes just legs. But for myself, with raising my personal protection dog, I never wanted him to see that picture. I never want it to be a tease of a suit, and then the suit is put on. The suit is always a full suit.
And it's just a sleeve.
So that's the thing too. With the sleeve, he was never teased with the sleeve, and then it was put on. The sleeve was always on. So it's always a part of the person, and he was never slipped.
No, the way the decoy moves is the way is what brings it out of the dog, right? When your dogs are looking at the decoy as the rabbit because he's running around like a rabbit, and then he goes, "Look, bite me here,"
But I don't think you're understanding the picture here. So with what I'm saying is my dog doesn't see it as equipment because it's always a full picture. So the decoy is never in a picture where it would be seen as equipment. He's never slipping equipment, which is kind of how we do it in play, right? Is my understanding of how it's introduced in play is you tease the equipment, you put it on, you slip the suit. He's never been slipped on a sleeve, mainly also because his grips were tight enough that he couldn't. But also he's never seen a picture of a decoy that is only wearing a jacket or a decoy that's only wearing pants, because I never want him to not see a full picture, because you have to make sure that those pictures are painted. Otherwise it can become equipment fixation. And in my line of work, in my discipline, we don't want any chance of any equipment fixation. So that wouldn't come into play.
So do you think the dog doesn't recognize a difference between a person wearing a suit and a person not wearing a suit?
I think they can recognize that, right? They can definitely see that, but I think you have more opportunity for it just to become a play in equipment fixation by taking the suit off and slipping suits, or slipping equipment, or teasing them with equipment and then putting it on. When it's a full picture of that person, I think you're less likely to associate it to just equipment. Because when my dog sees my decoy without equipment on, it's the same response as when he sees his decoy with equipment on. right?
Well, yeah,
Which he's
because
also really young.
that's his playmate.
But it's not the same, right? I don't
So I'm a decoy,
understand
right?
why you would equate it to just play.
So I'm a decoy. I've been decoying since 2005, right? Every dog that comes over here is excited to see me. It doesn't matter if I'm wearing a piece of equipment or not. The dog gets excited to see me, and because the dog knows, hey, look, I get to bite that guy, and we have fun.
Yeah, to you, you don't have a concern with the dog just biting you without a suit.
No,
If
not
my decoy takes the leash and attempts to work my dog, you can see immediate conflict if he would attempt to apply any sort of pressure. That is when my dog turns around and the redirect is possible, because he has that association of biting him in the past, and that's their relationship, right? It's never been a play relationship. When my personal opinion is, when I put a puppy or a dog on a suit or a sleeve, the sleeve is not, when I put a sleeve on an arm for these purposes, a sleeve is on an arm, not like a free sleeve with a puppy, but sleeve is on an arm or a full suit. My puppies aren't seeing that picture until I think that they're psychologically mature enough to handle the seriousness of going into a real fight. Because like you said, there's a difference between sparring with your partners and
you
going
had a
into a real
7-month-old
fight. And I
puppy.
want my dogs to always see the picture of, when they're in this scenario, it's a real scenario and it's serious. I don't want it to be a picture of play. But again, this is my personal preference. And just with the dogs that I've seen going forward, I've met plenty of law enforcement dogs that the fallout is that comes in when the dog is in a real life scenario. And like we said, those real life scenarios, you can practice all day in the gym with sparring with a partner, but you can't plan for the adrenaline that you feel when someone's actually trying to kill you. The smell of blood, the taste of blood, the feeling of your muscles actually flexing. All these things are heightened stimulus for the dog and are putting the dog in an extremely heightened state of mind. And when they're in that state of mind, they don't have clarity, because we can do all the training.
There's where we disagree. There's where we disagree. I've put lots of dogs on the streets. I've put a lot of dogs in police departments. Okay. And that's where we disagree, is because there can be clarity. And I agree, because I've seen what you're talking about, where somebody gets to a fight with their dog. We're doing a mock scenario where the decoy's into a fight with the officer, and the dog's never seen that picture before, and the dog jumps out and tags the officer instead. Right. Like I
but
get
that's
that.
a lack of clarity, right? And it has to do with, I think it has. I'm sorry, allow me to finish. You cut me off originally. So I think that has to do with the lack of clarity, because the dog is in such a heightened state of mind. When you're in a fight, a real fight, when you're in a gunfight, you don't hear your gun going off next to you. When you're at the shooting range, you sure as shit hear that gun, right? So I think that the same thing goes for a dog. They don't hear the same things. They don't feel the same things when they're in that state of mind. So it's not fair to say that they can have that level of clarity when you can't train for that scenario. You can't train for your dog to have live bites, because that would just really be unethical, right? I mean, you can do it, but it'd be pretty unethical. So you can't do it. So
we used to do it back in the day.
Yeah, we can't do it. So, but that's my point. You can't train for that. So that's why your foundations and your pathways are so important, because at the end of the day, your dog is going to default to those pathways. And as I was saying previously, I've met numerous law enforcement dogs where the decoy was their handler, and sure as shit, they come back after their first live bite, and when they were pulling that dog off of the bite, the dog redirected because they lack clarity. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of heightened state of arousal in those moments. And it's not really necessarily unfair for the dog to just act on instinct at that moment, because they're in that state of mind. We can't expect them to regulate themselves at that state of mind when they're at that heightened arousal, in my opinion, of course.
I disagree. And here's why. Before I ever got into protection work, I used to go catch wild pigs in the woods. If any of those bulldogs turned around and redirected, it was because they weren't clear in the head. And they typically would get put away because people didn't like handling dogs that would turn around and bite them.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
I believe these dogs, if they're clear in the head and the training is good, then that won't happen. And I've seen it happen, but every time I've seen it happen is, like you said, there's lack of clarity. Well, lack of clarity is bad training, not because somebody let their dog bite them in a suit.
There can be many reasons for lack of clarity, right?
Well,
Confusion and communication, but
of course. But we're talking about the instance of somebody putting a jacket on and working their own dog, and how that would create conflict with that dog and the handler.
let's talk about it for a second. So we're not talking about Shane's video. We'll leave Shane alone. But the videos that you tagged me in where you were catching Rocky, I think, and Rocky is a Mondio Ring 3.
Yep, we just got our MR3 back in May.
Okay,
pretty
cool.
good score.
Congrats. That's awesome. And so you were, I don't know how recent those videos were, but you were catching Rocky, and in one of the clips where you caught him, I probably didn't catch it, but I think you may have asked him for an out, and then you said his name, or you just said his name and he outed. But before he outed, he was pretty vocal on the bite. And I know we've talked previously, vocality in the bite typically can signal an insecurity, and usually we say that's genetics. I don't think Rocky has, I've never met Rocky, but I don't think that he has that genetic insecurity, because he's a Mondio Ring 3 dog.
No, he does. That's what
he does.
Yeah.
Okay,
so my biggest flaw about him is he used to be really, really vocal on the bite, right? Okay. And again, I'm from hunting pigs, right? I got into doing protection work after I had done hog hunting for many, many years. And in the hog hunting world, if a dog gets vocal on a pig, he's about to let go and quit. And that's why a dog that gets vocal for me it's not perfect, right? But I'm also a realist, and I know that no dog is perfect, and you got to train the dog in front of you. So I took the dog in front of me, and he's still a really, really freaking good dog. The only complaint I have about him is how vocal he gets on the bite, right? That's really the only complaint I have. He's smart, he's athletic, he offers behavior, he's bonded really well with me and wants to play with me. And you know, me working him, I have to work him. Like because I have to teach, because for the sport that I do, like there's technical exercises that I have to work him with.
Can you, I don't know the sport that well, so I'm really curious. Can you talk about it? I think it's like an object guard. And can you talk about that and how you train for it? Because I think you might have mentioned it, and I'm really curious on how you go about training for it.
Sure. So as the decoy trains the exercise, the handler doesn't train the exercise. Yeah. Right. You put a dog on. Are you
the decoy in this scenario for your dog to start it, or yes. Okay, cool. Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
This is the second MR3 dog I've had, and I've done both dogs the same way. But I start them off as puppies, right? Once they're biting the pants, usually by 6 months to 10 months old, I've got them biting the suit, and I start off with the dogs on a touch pad, and there's a circle. I draw a line at 1.5 meters. When I go inside that circle, the dog can bite me. If I'm outside that circle, the dog cannot bite me, right? So the rules of the sport say that when the decoy comes in, the dog can bite, and the decoy has to freeze for 2 seconds. And then the decoy has to leave, taking the shortest route away from the object. Well, those are the rules of the game. So I use the rules of the game to teach the cues when the dog should let go and go back to the touchpad. In the beginning, though, the dog doesn't know those cues, so we have to have the decoy go out, touch, so the dog lets go and goes back to the touchpad.
Is he using the same out command you would use for your dog if you were handling him on a decoy?
I'm sorry?
Is he using the same out command that you would use? Well, you're the decoy.
I don't use out to tell him to let go.
But not like
I
that
use his
word.
name.
Oh, okay. But so for your out command, well, it's just his name. So it would be the same either way if you're sending him on a person, on a decoy? Besides decoying on yourself, you use the same word?
What do you mean?
His name? You only
Yes.
use his name? Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yeah. So if I say his name, that means he needs to let go but stay with the decoy. If I say out, so like when I'm doing the search and escort, and my dog goes finds the decoy, and my dog the decoy makes an escape, my dog bites the decoy, I say Rocky, that means let go. Out, put your head in his crotch.
Okay, cool.
Okay. So
Yeah.
back to the object guard, right? I walk in the circle, I make a little noise with the stick, and I solicit the dog to come bite. The dog comes and bites. Good dog, good dog, good dog, right? And then I get quiet, and then I stop moving. And then when I stop moving, usually by then, because I played tug a whole lot, where when I stop moving, the dog lets go and I give a rebite, right? So at this point, the dog will let go, and I'll say touch, and the dog will go back to the object. And as soon as the dog puts its feet back on it, I say yes, and I give the dog a bite on the other leg. Tick, tick, tick with the stick, move, 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 good dog, good dog, good dog. I'm playing with the dog, right? And then I freeze, or I get quiet, then I freeze. Usually by then, the dog lets go as soon as I freeze, and I say touch again, the dog goes back, and then I walk out of the circle. I come walk back up to the circle. I'll stop at the line, make sure the dog's going to be honest and stay on the touchpad. And if he does, then I step into the line to let the dog come and bite. It's how I teach it. So in a trial situation, me handling the dog, I walk out there, I put the object down, I say objet, and I go hide in the blind and can't say anything. And the decoy is the one out there trying to steal the object, right?
And he just knows when it hits the line because it's been so conditioned.
Yes, because dogs understand distance very well.
Yeah.
Right. They're predators. They can judge distance really well. So teaching them when they can come off to come bite is not that hard, right? A lot of you don't even need to paint lines in the grass because the dogs don't pay attention to that. I paint the lines in the grass for me, so I can make sure the dog's consistent. You know what I mean?
But that's not there in trial, right? The lines.
What's that?
The
lines aren't there in trial. Yes.
Oh yeah.
The lines are. Well, yeah, because the judge wants to see if the dog comes off early.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right. So if the decoy is standing outside of that 2 meter line, the dog comes and bites, you're going to lose a point for every meter past that 2 meters your dog came to bite the decoy.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right. and then there's the outside circle too. So let's say the decoy grabs the object and runs with it and gets 4 meters, but not 5 meters. Well, if he gets 4 meters, you still get some points. If he makes it outside of that 5 meter circle, well, then you zero the exercise.
That's interesting. That's a tough one.
Yeah, you cannot teach that exercise without having the decoy instruct the dog. Because even if you were to just do it all with a tug, at some point you've got to get out of there and let the decoy kind of take over where you left off.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Yeah, I was curious because I've never heard of that kind of scenario, but again, I'm not super knowledgeable on the ring sports, but it's really interesting to hear the mechanics of it and just kind of see how that works. That's really cool.
Yeah, so once you teach the dog distance, then it's about, hitting from different angles, showing the dog all the different pictures, stuff like that. And then once they understand that, then it's, bringing a really good French ring decoy to show a lot of tricks, esquives, pivots, knocking them out the way, stuff like that.
That's awesome.
But yeah, that's how we build the object, right? It just can't be done, And the same thing for the escort. You can go teach your dog escort, but you have to put the pants on to teach your dog the escort, right? If you want your dog to bite the legs, or if you want your dog to bite the arms on the escort, you've got to wear a jacket. But either way, the decoy teaches the dog that exercise. Whether you're the decoy doing it or you're paying somebody else to do it, it's still necessary. And the decoy has to be able to instruct the dog, right?
Yeah, I will never bite my dog.
I've watched a lot of video of your dog. They look nice. They look real.
He's a good dude.
I don't see. I don't see like a bad dog there at all. I don't see bad training. I see good decoy work with your dog, and
They're
I see your
amazing.
dog having a really good time. And I
Yeah.
would bet money that if you put a sleeve on or a jacket on and let your dog bite you, you would watch your dog and feel your dog playing with you in the same manner it does when you play with a tug.
And I'm going to disagree with you because my dog doesn't think it's a game, right? The videos that you showed were when he was 8 months old. He's very aggressive now, right? We're starting to tap into some of that aggression now that he's starting to mature. It's not to me, there's no benefit. I'm not a better decoy than any of the decoys that I work with. So it doesn't provide good decoying to my dog. And I can build a relationship through tug play. So it doesn't, there's nothing that interests me about decoying for my dog because to me, I've seen
That's fair.
a lot of fallout from it. I work with really great decoys. I like to be the worst person on the team so that I can always be learning. There are plenty of dogs that I can decoy for and my dog can learn from some of the best. I'm not a big fan of green decoys and green dogs. Especially
I
in
typically
supervised, I think that
agree
that's
with
just really
that.
dangerous. And
It
so
is it. I think
it can be dangerous, right?
like
Like,
green decoys and green dogs. I agree. Typically don't go together, but when people refer to that, what they're referring to is testing, not building.
but I think
Right?
some
You
level
don't
of
take a
building, you need to be more than green to be working with the green dog because there's so many small details that you miss, right? Because when you're a green decoy, you're really focusing on making sure that you've been decoying for a while. Now it's also memory. You feel it. But for me, I haven't been decoying that long. So when I'm in there, I'm really thinking about moving my arm and the movements I'm making and how the dog is
I get that.
responding to my pressure, right? And so I try to really be aware of my movements, and it's harder for me to focus on what the dog needs. So it's easier to learn on a dog that already knows the picture and knows how to, like, what movements to make so that you can focus more on yourself and not worry so much about building the dog. One of the things I love about the main decoy I work with that's in a lot of my TikTok videos, he really does a great job of in the moment reading my dog and adjusting. And I think that that's really important when you're building a
Of
young
course,
dog,
yes.
right? And I think that he's really good at reading those subtle things, like the smallest things like an ear flick or an eye twitch or how stiff his tail is. He reads those things and he notices the subtle differences in between every time he works him. And I think that that takes some level of skill and experience. So me personally, like, I don't even let my green dog bite green decoys at this time because it's just, I don't know that he's ready for it. Once my decoy tells
No,
me he's ready
that's
as well.
I agree with that wholeheartedly, right? Like, 'cause I've had some bad experiences back in my early days where somebody said they could do something. We talked about what they were going to do, and then they did something completely different, and I was pissed off and about to punch somebody, you know. But like, I get that, but you've got to always advocate for your dog,
Exactly.
right? Right? Everybody should always advocate for their dog. Now, if you know your dog is not the type of dog that bites for fun, then that's your dog, right? Say that probably makes up 1 or 2% of the total population.
I think that unicorns make up 1% of the population,
I don't
right?
think they
But
exist.
I don't think a dog with real human intent does. And that's just because I guess, like, I'm mainly around protection dogs. I'm not mainly around sport dogs. I work very closely with the law enforcement agencies here and the protection dogs here. And I see the human intent. I help raise a lot of those dogs. So you see that switch occur. And I think a lot of it has to do with we wait for a really long time to put our dogs on a person, whether that's a sleeve or a suit. Like I see a lot of people,
So
and I hate saying it like
what's a
this,
really
but
long time?
what'd you say?
You said you wait a really long time. What is a really long time?
I guess for myself, I consider it a long time because I see a lot of people putting puppies on arms, at 4 or 5 months. And me personally, I don't think that a dog is mentally mature enough to handle that because, again, for myself, I treat my puppies how I would treat my dogs. So if I want them to see the fight as a serious fight, I'm going to introduce it as a serious fight when they're mentally ready for that. And until that point, I'm gonna let them be puppies and enjoy the game with a wedge and a sleeve off of a person, and barrel tugs, all those fun equipment that they can play with as puppies. And then once I feel like they're mentally mature enough and physically mature enough, of course, then I put them into the situation where they're dealing with a person. And I'm not saying put them in defense, but I think I want them thinking that this is a serious game and this isn't play. I don't want it ever associating the person in the suit with play. But that's, again, my personal preference, because I want them as an adult to always feel that it was a serious encounter.
So what if I told you that there are lots of puppies out there? There are a lot of nice dogs out there. I worked Rocky in sleeves at 3 months old.
That's awesome.
Right. My dog, my last dog.
We also have different goals. We have to keep that clear, though.
No,
we have very different goals. You want your dog to see it as a game, right?
I understand what you're saying. I try really hard with the dogs that I have to make sure that I keep it a game.
Yeah, exactly.
I firmly believe that the individual dog decides whether or not he wants to bite somebody for real. Now, there are a lot of dogs out there that some people would say are soft or just call them sporty, right? Those types of dogs would probably never bite a person for real. But I can tell you this, the dogs at the high level, they'll like 90% of them will. 90% of them will bite for real. Rocky, like he wants to be a cop dog. Like he wants to go there. I don't let him go there.
But
it would be real easy for me to switch him over and sell him as a police dog like that. It would take me 2 sessions, one with the hidden sleeve and one without, and it'd be over. But my problem then is that the same thing, because my last female that I had, she was a KNPV bred dog. Everybody told me those dogs are way too extreme because of the lines of dogs that she came from. They was like, you will never title that dog in Mondio ring. Well, I got a 3 on her. Nice. Right? And now she's a service dog for a lady down in Dallas who lives a bougie life. But dogs with extreme prey drive, I've seen them come out. I've seen Malinois literally come out of the womb and just want to bite something, and they're not thinking, hey, I'm biting somebody. They're just a heat-seeking missile. Point me in the direction, and I'm going to put my mouth on it. You said bite a log, I'm going to bite a log.
Exactly, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I got 3 of them in here.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter where they are, and they're all prey drive in that moment. And because they're so prey driven and their nerves are so steady, you cannot push them into defense no matter how much you pressure them.
I think that so you refer to defense as fear, and I guess I still think of it some as the predatory aggression, like we talked about previously, because they are dogs cycle through their drives within seconds in a bite, right? Like there's so much going on. They're cycling between being the aggressor and defending against potential threats, which again, we're saying that as predatory aggression because they're countering to relieve that pressure, right? Whatever that looks like.
Well, they're trying to win the fight.
Exactly. They're trying to overpower their opponent. Yes. Right? Yeah. So, sorry, got distracted by these comments. A bite is not a bite. There's differences. But with this, what were we just talking about?
Pushing dogs into defense.
Yes, putting dogs into defense. Dogs cycle through their drives in a bite, in so many different drives within seconds, right? I think it's unfair to say that your dog is always going to be completely in prey. And it's not fair to say that there's no conflict in prey. right?
I think that when you have really high driven dogs, and if I look back at like a pit bull on a pig, the good ones never think they're losing the fight.
No,
It does
but
like,
they
and
defend
I've seen
against
pigs
attack.
gut a bulldog open, like get up underneath the vest and the shoulder, and like just put a hole the size of a softball in them, right? And the dog never let go and acted like it was winning the fight the whole time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen and heard of like, because again I've worked with a lot of different departments. You've probably heard stories of, similar to where like dog goes in for a bite and the guy pulls a knife out and guts the dog and the dog's guts hanging out, but the dog is still on the bite, right? There's no defense there. That dog thought he was winning the fight the whole time, and that's my opinion. And I've seen that, and I've seen where dogs get pushed into that defense. But for me, if a dog gets pushed into defense, it goes back to the old bulldog thing where if they're afraid, they're going to quit.
Yeah, I think Carrie brings up a good point here too. I consider that more fight because pain is involved, right? And when pain is involved, fear is activated in a certain extent. So I think they're tapping into a little bit of a different drive, but they are still being defensive because they are countering against the pain that's coming because they want to shut it off and they want to overcome their opponent. So that's why they continue in the fight. Go ahead.
I kind of understand what you're saying. I used to believe in fight drive. Again, I came from the bulldogs where I saw that the fight itself was a reward for the dog. So I believed that fight drive was a thing. With experience and talking to lots of people way smarter than me, I've learned that there's no such thing as fight drive. That is predatory aggression. That's what that is. Predatory aggression is the dog chasing, catching, killing. And after the dog catches it, when it has to kill it, there's that fight. That is part of prey. That is part of that predatory aggression. It's part of the whole sequence, right? Now, if that other animal turns and starts to fight them and injure them, then they have to worry about, okay, now my life is in danger and I can either run or fight back, right? Most dogs in the wild in that moment run because they look, I might lose the battle today, but you know what? I'll eat tomorrow. You know what I mean? But for us, when the dog goes down and bites, like, for me, a dog that goes into defense is weak. Like, I don't like dogs that feel fear because I never want a dog to even think about quitting.
But I don't think that fear necessarily means that you're quitting, right? Like, I can be scared of the unknown of diving into any business, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to do it, right? I think that we have to respect that these dogs are going to experience some level of fear, but it's how do they overcome that fear, right? Are they confident enough in their ability? Have we established those foundations strong enough that those dogs are confident enough in their ability to overcome that fear and overcome that, for lack of a better word, pressure?
So how do they overcome it? How do they overcome it?
Yeah, right?
No, that's a question. How does the dog overcome it?
Well, we're talking like a suit scenario, just countering, right? Pushing harder, pushing in, just trying to into their opponent and overcome their opponent in the sense of the dog winning, right?
And what happens when that doesn't get them a win?
What do you mean?
What happens when they counter pressure with pressure and that's not working and the pressure is still coming and it's getting heavier?
So I think there's an art, and again, I'm very new to decoying, right? So I'm speaking from mainly a handler's perspective, but for myself with my dog, when we were when we were training him on his counters, we're rewarding as a puppy on a pillow or whatever. When he would counter, we're giving that movement, we're backing up, we're rewarding it with whatever. As he gets older, we start adding some more pressure into it. As he gets more mature, we start adding more pressure into it. Pressure from a clatter stick stays on you, you counter, pressure comes off, big party, right? It's a lot of fun. And then as he gets really comfortable with countering under that pressure, as soon as the stick touches, he's countering, right? Now I know that, hey, I'm gonna make you counter twice before I remove this pressure. And that's when you start to intermittently add longer durations of pressure, but you're gonna also go back to those shorter durations to make sure the dog still understands that countering, like if the dog gives me a really strong counter the first time, I'm rewarding that shit, right? But if a couple of them are weak, no, I'm gonna make you press harder if I know that this dog in particular has a solid understanding that he can manipulate his environment through countering that pressure, whatever it is. I want that mindset to be instilled before I start adding additional time with pressure, if that makes sense.
Well, I get, and I understand how you're teaching the dog to overcome pressure, right? How to counter it. I understand that. My question is, or I guess my point is that when all of that doesn't work and the dog is in a point where it's thinking it might lose the fight, right? How long is it going to stick around if it thinks it might lose? If that thought is ended
I've
the
never
dog's
hit
head,
that point.
yeah.
So
because you're doing things right. You don't want to push dogs to quit.
Right, because the goal isn't to break the dogs. That's
correct.
Never our goal. It's always to build them. So like for
Correct.
him, the longest fight that he's been in, and there was a lot of cycling of a lot of drives. You know, he was picked up, thrown around. He was about 14 months at the time, brand new decoy that he'd never seen before. Lots of noise, picked up, thrown around, and that was an 8-minute fight. And I would call that an actual fight. There was some sort of pain thresholds that were reached there. And that was an 8-minute fight to which I physically pulled him off and then took him back to the car extremely frustrated. So for me, when I'm building these dogs, I don't want them to ever see a picture of where they're not overpowering their opponent, because I want them to constantly have the mindset that they are powerful enough to always manipulate their environment and always overcome their opponent, so that in the real world, we're getting those dogs that aren't giving up just because the pressure and thresholds have been increased.
No, I got that, but I think that's genetics. I don't think you can teach the dog to not quit.
I think you can build the confidence in their ability.
Well, you can build it.
Genetics always matter. Genetics always matter, right? And for personal protection and law enforcement, but especially personal protection, we're looking at those solid levels of genetics. Any dog that is having a lot of those insecurities where we have any concerns of it popping off would be washed. So those aren't dogs that we'd be putting out because it's unreliable. We can't have that. We have to have a dog that is 100% reliable and know that it's always going to bite. And that's why we get those confident dogs, because genetics always matter, no matter what you're looking at. But so for myself, no, my dogs would never see a picture of when they fail, because it's not a scenario that I'd ever want them to see in the real life.
Yeah. So coming from the world of bulldogs again, I'm a firm believer that a dog that's going to quit is going to quit, right? And no amount of training is going to ever make that dog not quit, right? So when we talk about genetics and we're talking about drives, for me, prey drive it's an inherited trait, right? And I want dogs so driven, like so prey drive crazy, that it's all predatory aggression. Never once in their life will the thought of I'm going to lose this fight come out, because genetically it's not there, right? If I had a dog that ever thought that, I mean, I have a dog that thinks that now, right? So I can't say that I would just completely wash the dog, but I can tell you I tried to give this dog away 3 times. You know, so I did try to wash him 3 times. I tried to give him away to somebody else, you know, and I kept him, and I love him, you know. He's my buddy now. But anyways, I think we kind of feel the same and want the same thing, right?
We just have different end goals.
Well, yes and no, right? So like, we just do it differently. right? The foundation I lay for dogs that are going to go on the street is no different than the foundation I lay for my sport dogs, right? The biting technique, where they're biting, targeting, entries, pivots, how to deal with pressure, right? I teach that at a very, very young age, how to counter pressure with pressure, right? And I don't want to have to sit around and wait on a dog to turn a year old before I can do any of that, you know? So the only difference between what I do with a sport dog versus what I do with a police dog is really only a matter of about 4 training sessions. Now, I'm not going to take a dog that I have raised myself and do civil work with that dog on myself. You know what I mean? When I say civil work, we talked about how I define civil is I don't want the dog focusing on me, because when my dogs are biting me in the suit, they're not biting me in the suit, they're biting the suit. I just happen to be wearing it, you know? But that's for dogs that I plan on taking and trying to take as far as I can in sport. When I have a dog that's going to go on the street, the only difference is again, teach the dog, you know, get the dog to, you know, throw the sleeve over there. The dog looks at the sleeve, crack the whip, sting him in the butt. The dog barks at the man, shows some aggression, come in with a hidden sleeve.
Well, you're tapping into defense there, right?
There's no defense there.
But you're hitting them with the whip.
It's just anger.
I feel like you can't say that that's only anger, because there's a level of pain involved, and with pain, there's always fear.
So
their fear thresholds are tapped into when you experience pain.
So back to the martial arts analogies that we talked about in the beginning. Okay, 2 boxers are in a ring, right? And we're sparring, and I get punched in the face. What am I going to do there? I'm going to react with aggression.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, rent to the garage.
So yeah, I'm gonna react with aggression, and because I'm competitive, I'm gonna try to one up the guy. You know, and then when the bell goes ding ding, we're friends again. You know. So it's kind of the same thing. So when I crack the whip or I run it across their feet, you know, to get the dog to look at me again, I don't do this with my very own dog, right? I don't do this with my very own dog. I do this with a dog who's always viewed me as a sparring partner.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, where we differ, right? Because your end goal is game, and that's, sorry, puppies. Your end goal with your dog is it always is a game, and that's never how I want my dog seeing bite work is as a game, because because it's not. He's never going to be put in a scenario where it's just a game. It's if I ask him to work, it's going to be real. He needs to have that mindset.
Okay, let me ask you this. I lost my question. Hang on.
We were talking about. I want it to be serious for him.
Yeah, I know what we were talking about. I'm just trying to think about how I was going to word that question I had in my head. So if you have 2 fighters fighting, right? And let's say we've raised these fighters in a bubble. You know what I mean? And they don't understand the difference between. No, that's not a good question. That's not a good way to go with it.
Here, while you think, I'm going to touch on a couple of these questions.
Sure.
So my decoy is making it real every time. I think by making it real, you're talking about tapping into defense, and no, not. We're using prey, and predatory aggression, as we've kind of previously defined, is mainly how he's worked. Has he been tapped into defense? Yes, he has. But the way that we prepare them for it being serious is they always see a full suited decoy. We're not slipping equipment. We're never teasing with the equipment and then putting it on. The equipment is always on the person, and then the dog is physically removed from the bite, as opposed to the decoy slipping the equipment and we play tug with it after, or the dog possesses that. They do that as puppies with all of their other equipment. So hopefully that answers your question. And Carrie?
I got my question now. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. So my question was what's wrong with it being a game if the dog always wins the game?
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right? So
even like, and how does sport not transfer to real world?
I'm not saying that sport doesn't transfer to real world. I'm saying the act of making the equipment the fixation is where you lose the clarity for the dog. You need that human intent. Like Carrie said, you need that human intent for personal protection. So turning the human into a game.
I get that. I get that part. I get where you don't want dogs to be equipment fixated. I understand that. And there's people out there who train sport to teach the dog that the man's the rabbit, and it's all still prey, which looks very similar to what a lot of your videos showed, where the guy is just a rabbit and the dog's playing a game and having a good time. But I don't understand how you think. Well, no, you've already explained that, so that's
I think we disagree on this one, right? Like for myself, because there's always 10 roads to Rome, as we've all talked about before. I think that I always want the picture to be painted that it's never about the equipment, it's always about the person. And so that's why I always set the picture for my dog that it's about the person. And, we're never teasing him with the equipment when they're on a suit or on a person at that point in their training development, right? I never want them to see the equipment as a toy. If I need to go back and work on grips, I'm not going to do that with the suit. More than likely, I'll probably take some steps back and go back to a wedge, where I can focus on like grips, depending on the dog, of course. But, prey is not usually present in passive situations. Agreed. I think that for personal protection, you do need to tap into all those drives, because they are going to cycle through all of those drives when they're in a real life scenario and they're at such a heightened state of arousal. Like we said before, we can't account for the taste of blood in their mouth, the feeling of how muscles flex when someone's screaming because there's actually a dog live biting their arm. We can train with hidden sleeves, we can train with suits, but we can't prepare our dogs for the adrenaline rush and the dopamine that they're going to feel in those situations and expect them to have the same level of clarity as when they're playing tug with you in a suit. I don't think that that's fair to ask, because when you're a person, if someone's attacking you with a knife, you're not thinking with the same level of clarity as if someone is just play fighting with you. When someone's play fighting with you, you can think a lot clearer. If someone's actually trying to kill you or cause harm to you, you're usually not thinking a lot clearer, which is why it's really important to have the muscle memory developed of martial arts and self-defense, so that you know those pathways when you're at that heightened state of arousal. Your body just muscle memory defaults to those pathways. I think of it the same way with the dog.
So the Carrie says prey is not usual present in passive situations. That's not true, because just the sight of a sleeve laying on the ground or a decoy sitting there in a suit not moving, you see dogs go crazy. It's real common. Decoys can be passive, but just the sight of the bite object or the prey item excites dogs. I'm sure a lot of people have seen that, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? If my dog sees a decoy sitting out, or his normal decoy sitting out, he's of course going to get at a heightened state of arousal because he understands that something's going to happen there. Now, are we working on the neutrality? We're getting there. We just started that. But I still think that a lot of the passive scenarios that she's mentioning in personal protection, because when we say passive scenarios, a lot of times people think we mean just sending a dog on a person in a chair, because those are the scenarios that we see a lot on social media. But when we're talking
hiding under a bed, in a closet, somebody hiding under a bed,
exactly.
In
so
a closet,
if we're talking someone hiding under a bed, or someone waiting for you in your home, that's not prey, that's defense. That's where that defense drive is coming in, because they're not hunting their prey at that state of mind. They're not chasing their prey because they don't know the prey is there. The prey is jumping out at them to scare them.
Well, that's a different situation than hunting prey hiding.
But we're not talking about them chasing a person into a house. We're talking about a person hiding in a house and jumping out at you. So say someone is
what's a search exercise in all sport?
But what if we're not talking a search exercise?
But that's what that is. The dog is going to search. We're not talking about sport
here. We're talking about personal protection. So we're talking about a real life scenario. If we're cueing a dog to search, that's a whole different story. We're tapping into that prey drive, that hunt drive. But when we're talking a real passive scenario, say someone's waiting for me on my couch with a knife, I walk into the room, that's not prey. If that person jumps out at us, that's not prey drive that my dog is being tapped into to bite that person. That's defense.
Maybe your dog. My dog, I say go, he goes.
But we're not talking you're saying go. We're saying someone jumps out and grabs you. You don't have time to say go.
Well, if my dog understands the picture and I've trained for a picture of somebody jumping out and grabbing me, then my dog would understand to bite them. And if my dog didn't, then I'm sure it wouldn't take but more than, hey, get his ass, and he's getting his ass. You know?
But
and if the dog backs up and runs, well, then we have problems.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. If the dog acts like dog runs away, that's a problem, right? But what I'm saying is,
defense. It doesn't have to be. It can be defense, but it doesn't have to be defense. The dog doesn't have to be scared there.
And so, Jessica, you bring up a good point. These exercises need to be trained no matter what. So here's the thing with personal protection and law enforcement. You can train scenarios to an extent, but you can't train for everything that happens in the real world. You can't train for all the crazy shit that people do, especially when they're on drugs. So I think that you have to really make sure that you have a really strong foundation and a really strong core so that you know that your dog will default to those natural pathways when they're asked to perform in a situation or a scenario they've never seen. Because it's not real to say that you can really train for every single scenario when we're talking personal protection and law enforcement.
But I think okay, so Jessica just made a good point, and you brought something up that made me think of this. In the sport I play, you can never prepare for the scenario. There's no pattern. You can't prepare for the scenario the judge is going to throw at you in some of those exercises. So we have to teach the dogs. But you can prepare
for the level of stress your dog is going to experience.
We have to teach the dogs to generalize, right? The dogs need to understand concepts, not just, hey, that thing happened, do this. That thing happened, do that. Because in the real world, you can't mimic every single thing. But if you've taught your dog to generalize behaviors, then you don't need to worry about, oh, I let my dog, I didn't train for that one thing. Now I have to make sure my dog does this thing or something, It's generalization is just teaching them a concept, not a particular step-by-step exercise.
We're teaching them pathways, right? We're helping them to create those pathways for how to behave when they experience certain emotions or certain situations. And then we help them to generalize that by showing them more pictures. But I don't think what I'm speaking of is sport, because again, we're talking about the person as a game versus the person as a opponent. I don't know if that's the best way to put it.
Do you think that it would matter if my dog bit somebody for real?
Do I think it matters? In what sense?
Do you think he would behave or react differently?
Like in the bite? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, in the moment.
Yeah, I think
everything.
I
How
think
he
so.
reacts to the pressure of the person.
But your dog is already extremely vocal in the bite anyways. You know that there's insecurities there, so I don't know that that's necessarily a fair assumption because he already has insecurities with a suit, so let alone a real person in real suit. But
he has insecurities.
You said yourself he has insecurities because I said that I referred back that I didn't think he was insecure, and you said that he is insecure.
Well, he is. Look, I'll get this. So, insecurity for me, I believe, can come from frustration, right? An example I give is dog goes and, wolf is chasing down a bobcat, right? He wants to eat the bobcat. The bobcat decides it's going to fight back, right? No, the wolf's got this thing by the back of the head and he's just crushing it. The wolf might decide to get a little vocal if he's like frustrated because the damn thing hasn't died yet.
Right.
That's an insecurity. For me, that's still an insecurity because like, how come it hasn't died yet? You know what I mean? And
yeah. There's some level of insecurity to it. I agree.
And that's where I think it comes from with my dog in particular. Right? I don't think it's because, oh, he's conflicted because of, or he has a suit issue, or he has a decoy issue or anything. I think it's, he gets frustrated, and that frustration leads to him being vocal, which in my opinion is insecurity. And that insecurity is just because, well, how come it hasn't died yet? I'm trying to kill it. How come it hasn't died yet?
It's like confusion, frustration, right? And
I guess you could say that to a degree.
Going back to your question, I think that because your dog has never seen, speaking as if I don't know if he has ever had a live bite, like a serious live bite, right? Not just grabbed your hand. But I think that, again, when these dogs experience this, like the dog for the first time that kills real prey, when you did hog hunting, with the first time they kill real prey, what is that like for them, right? They're so heightened at a state of arousal. It's a completely different state that you see your dog in. At least when I've seen it done, it's been pretty insane. It's a little too much for me, I'm going to be honest with you. But the hog hunting, when they get that taste of what a real hog feels like, it's a completely different reaction than when you're just playing tug with I don't know, I think you use like skins to train them, or whatever you use to build them up on it.
All right, you put them in a pen with a pig, and the genetics take over.
There you go. Yeah. But I think that it's different, and I think that it's just like with people, the easiest way to make an example is just like if someone was actually trying to kill me or cause harm to me, I'm going to feel a different state of arousal than I would if someone was just play boxing or I was sparring with my partners here, you know?
Yes, but...
Yeah, I definitely haven't seen enough dogs, but I also think that maybe you need to be a little bit more open-minded and less of an asshole. Otherwise, I'm going to boot you from this live.
So I think that... Do you think Bruce Lee was ever afraid of anybody on the street?
Here, my husband is a world champion jiu-jitsu player. So does he have fear going into competitions? Yes, that's a healthy level of fear. Because you have a healthy, it's both, right? Because I don't think that you can say that one is, I think that there's so many emotions going on when you're at that level of competition, because he's at a very high level of competition with jiu-jitsu, and he competes with some of the best in the world. And going into competition, does he have a fear of failure? Yes. Does he have a fear of getting hurt? No. But I think that that fear of not being able to overcome your opponent is always going to be there, because that's what motivates you to push harder, because you don't want to lose. You want to win. And I think that while the want to win is stronger than the fear of losing, I still think that fear of losing is, if that makes sense.
I guess I would, in that instance, I see what you're saying. As a martial artist myself, and I train with some of the best in the world myself. The reason those guys are good is because they're afraid they're not the best.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's why they put that work in during those camps. Right.
Right. And I think that's a healthy fear to have.
But that's a different type of fear than one that comes from like fear of loss of a resource, right? Like losing a game, like that's a different level of fear. And that would be, again, in my opinion, I think that's more of an argument for predatory aggression than it is defensive aggression.
Yeah, I get so caught up because I think of it as defending against imminent threats, right? Because you have to, if someone's attempting to take my back, I have to address that threat before I can become the aggressor. Right. So that may be a few defensive moves before I can take full mount, right?
So you say defensive move, I say counter moves.
And I think that we're saying the same things, we're just terminology a little bit different, right? So we have to make sure we stay clear on that so we don't get confused. Because I like how you put it as predatory aggression and defining it against being completely defensive out of a place of fear, like a fear of pain, a fear of getting hurt, a fear of losing. I think that predatory aggression is a better term so that you can keep it a little bit clearer. It's going to take me a second to get caught up. So let me get there. But yeah, I feel like fear versus nerve thing is very individual. Yeah, right. Fear and nerve is very individually dependent. I think sometimes they're going to go hand in hand. If you have a dog that's very nervy, then you're going to have a fear that comes with that of certain things. But your dog can experience fear without being nervy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Izzy says fear is taught. I don't agree with that at all, because I've seen dogs that for no reason were afraid of lots of things. You know, and especially when you start talking about some of your guardian breeds that have natural suspicion, right? Mm-hmm. Something goes bump in the night and they go running towards it barking. You know, that's a fear thing. It's not taught, it's genetics. That's just how it is sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't worked with a lot of guardian breeds, but I agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah. So what else we got in here?
Yeah, I like that we've had this discussion.
I've barely looked at any of the questions. We've been talking. I've been
trying to look at some of them.
I get lost as soon as I look down. So that's what's happened the last few times. Like, wait, what was I saying?
Yeah, what questions? If people have questions, definitely ask away. Because this has been a really good discussion. And I think that there's things that we can take from every discipline and apply it, right? Because every dog is different. So the more tools that we have in our tool shed, the better off we're going to be for training these dogs. So I like learning all the different techniques and all the new terminology. And I'm excited to be decoying more. Because that's a lot of fun.
I'm old and broke. I'm having knee surgery. I tore my knee again back in January, working dogs in Chicago. And I'm having surgery at the end of August. It just hurts too bad to work dogs. I can't do thrown attacks anymore. I'm still doing some of the stuff like the object guards and defensive handler, stuff where the dog's not running at me. But yeah, it sucks.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah, that's rough. Knee surgery is hard. Make sure you do your physical therapy.
Yeah, I've been doing physical therapy since January. Before that, I've had both my ankles completely reconstructed. My right knee, 2-3 years ago, I had my ACL meniscus repaired. This time it's the same knee, but it's my MPFL and my MCL they're going to go in and fix. So, yeah, it sucks. Okay, what do we got?
Would you agree sport and personal protection overlap more than we think? I think there's a lot of techniques, that can be utilized in both, right? While there are some differences, and people obviously always have their personal preferences, I think I've learned a lot from the sport community, but I've also learned a lot from the personal protection community, and I think a lot of it aligns more than people will admit on either side. Okay, I can't. All right, here we go. What if the dog does not perceive pressure, noise, the hits, or any of it? Are you asking if, what if it doesn't perceive it as pressure as stress? I mean, that's great if it doesn't perceive it as stress. Sorry, I don't know if I missed half your question. This is going to be the controversial one. I don't see many sport dogs that are successfully moved to police departments. Also, take it with a grain of salt. I am in Arizona. There is not a lot of highly successful sport trainers here. The highly successful stuff we do is mainly personal protection. There's not a lot of sport here. So the dogs that I see that are washed from police
are several French ring guys out there and a bunch of IPO stuff.
They're way up north, hours up north.
Not everybody. You've got, there's a guy down there in Phoenix. Chad Hunter's up north in Cave Creek or wherever it is. Mm-hmm. There's Andrew in Phoenix.
You'll have to send me his info.
Yeah, there's a number of there's like 3 or 4 certified French ring guys in the Phoenix area.
Yeah, I know there's some up north, but like I guess when I was
Darshan.
looking
Where
around
does
at sports
Darshan
stuff, I was
live?
looking for PSA.
Yeah, it's Darshan Haran, or how I don't know how you say his last name, or really
Okay,
even the
I'll have to
first
look
name.
him up.
But he's there, and then you've got Andrew. I forget his last name, but I have to look real quick. He's in Phoenix. I've been to his house. He's worked my dogs. He's a really good. He's a good decoy. He's a good guy. Um,
I have to
oh
look him up because I'd love to come watch,
yeah,
especially honestly.
yeah. I had one of my club members moved out there, and I went out there and picked up a camper from her and stopped and trained at a few of those places while I was out there.
Gary, I have a question. Why do a lot of sport people, and not all, say people who only do personal protection do it because they aren't skilled enough to do sport?
That's what I say. I
Why do you
stand
think
by
that?
it. It's either they're my belief is they're not good enough, or some people have anxiety about putting their stuff out in front of people, and I get that. Like they don't like going out in trials, and I can understand that and respect that, you know. But I think that if anybody who says they're anybody who says they train dogs, I believe that sport should be like your college degree. You know, how many years did it take me to get a MR3 on my first dog? 6 years. How many years did it take on this dog? 3.5, 4. How long does it take to get a bachelor's? 4 years. What's the difference? It's an international standard. It says you can teach your dog certain behaviors, right? And what we do is we're doing bite work, obedience, and agility, you know. So I think that somebody's going to be doing any sort of professional dog trainer thing. I think they should be putting their stuff out there for others to see,
I
and be
100%
judged
agree.
and be
Yeah.
judged, you know, under certain rules and stuff, you know.
Respectfully judged, right?
Well, of
Yeah.
course, right? Nobody likes a judge who's a dick. Although I've been called a dick a lot, and I'm in the judging program.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I
So,
think, yeah, go ahead.
but yeah, I
I'm
think
with
that
you, Gary. Too many
I think
politics.
that when people get to a certain point of proficiency, the natural tendency is to go, well, okay, you know, I'm going to go ahead and go out, especially if they have a nice dog. They typically, you know, they'll go out there and put it out there, and good for them when they do.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of with Carrie on this. I've had the opportunity to kind of travel around and work with a lot of trainers and groups. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of the sport community seems to be pretty my way or the highway and unwelcoming. And it's a lot of because I say it, because I can do it, or because I say so. And I found that a lot of the protection seems to be a little bit more open minded. But that's my personal experience with it. As far as my protection trainers always answer my questions and don't have an issue with it. And it's, you know, there's two sides to every stone. Whereas with sport, it's like, well, this is just how the great people have done it. And that's, again, that's my experience, which is why I kind of got a bad taste in my mouth for the sport community. While I think it's really cool and highly respectable, I don't feel like the community is super open minded.
So I think it comes down to individual groups,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Like even in the sport of Mondio ring, a lot of people you'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh my God, they were so nice. Everybody's so nice." But look, there's a lot of toxic people in Mondio ring. There's a lot of toxic people in French ring. There's a lot of toxic people in every group of society out there, right? And I run my club. I run my club the way that I run my club. And when people come to train with me, it is my way or the highway. And that's if they're training with my club, right? Because if they're training with my club, then my club has a reputation to uphold, right? Now, if somebody comes out and they have an idea that I think is better than mine, well, then I'm going to use it because I'm not closed-minded necessarily, right? But
You're humble enough to accept new ideas.
yeah, if I think it'll work, you know what I mean? Or at least I could be like, I think it'll work. Let's try it. You know what I mean? And I understand not everybody's like that because people don't necessarily like to do new things when they've been successful at what they've been doing.
And it makes,
You know?
I get it. I get it, right? You've had success. Why change it? I
Yeah,
get it.
and I've seen like I've seen a lot of people in like the force free part of TikTok, bitch about, nobody will let me come out and train at their club. No, because you're going to try to do it your way, and they've got a reputation of doing it their way. And if you go to a trial and say you train with them and you fail miserably, that looks bad on them. That makes them look bad. And not everybody gets that. Not everybody gets that. And so, like, when people come to train with me with my club, they're coming to be part of our team. You know what I mean? So that doesn't mean, so what that means is, because you're part of the team, if I play for the Buffalo Bills, I'm not training with the New York Jets.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, now, if somebody wants to come to me and pay me for private sessions, cool, I'm making money on it.
Yeah.
But when they come out to the club, my club isn't ran like a lot of other clubs. I've heard horror stories of like clubs charging like $300, $400, $500 a month and stuff like that. Like my club it's $200 a year in January and $50 a month when you show up for training. So that's what I charge for my club. And I do that because I understand that the time it takes to put in the work, and they've got to be there. People just have to be there.
Agreed.
But I think that regardless of I kind of what I was talking about with toxic people, I tell everybody, when people say, well, I want to do PSA, or I want to do Mondio ring, or I want to do French ring, and I tell everybody, like, look, find a group of people that you like training with. Who cares what you're doing as long as you're having fun with your dog, right?
100%. That's the most important thing. As long as your dog is benefiting and you're both enjoying it, that's the most important thing. Yeah, I originally thought I would want to do PSA and Street League, and I went around and there's not a lot of clubs here that I would join in Arizona, but I did travel to California and trained with a few different clubs out there. And then I found the protection group that I train with here, and I've never met a more welcoming and open-minded group of people. And while George has been training dogs for ages, right? He's one of the dinosaurs in the league. I think that he is extremely knowledgeable. And what I appreciate is that he's always open-minded to learning new techniques. And he's always pushing himself to learn new techniques so that we're not staying stagnant in our beliefs. And if we think it works, we try it, right? But I think that like you said, it's really important to find someone that you click with and that has the same goals as you do, right? I think especially if a force freeze trainer is coming to train with you, then I would expect that they would want to learn your methods, because why else would they come to train with you? You just want the name of the club, but that doesn't make sense, because
I think people like that just want access to decoys so they can send their dog to get bit without putting in the work to help the rest of the team, and without it's like they want to do their thing, but they want to use your toys or your tools.
Exactly. And that's not someone you want a part of the team anyways, like in my opinion, of course, but
that's how I feel about it. Like if you want to be part of the team, be part of the team. If you want to get private lessons, well, then you can pay for private lessons.
Exactly.
But I don't charge what I charge what I charge for group training, because it's a passion. It's what I love doing. So I'm not doing it to make money. I'm doing it to buy. What I do charge people for is to pay for equipment, and it really doesn't even cover that.
I was gonna say that probably doesn't cover much.
Like we hosted a trial here back in May. We're doing another one in December, but we hosted a trial here back in May, and I lost money. Like you don't make money doing those things, but it's just part of
memories.
It's
relationships.
I got my 3,
Nice.
and now my goals are to go to the nationals and then compete at Worlds. So We'll see what happens.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. Sport is a really cool thing. I plan on titling a dog. Yeah. Do I know if it's going to be my GSD? I don't know yet. We'll see. I like the sport side of obedience. I think that is really, really fun. And I like the cooperation that I think the sport world brings to play and to obedience. I think that that's one thing that's missed in some of the personal protection world is the cooperation and play. I've learned a lot about cooperative play with my dog through sport trainers. And I think that's one thing that personal protection could take away. But I think that they have a fear of taking it away because they think that they're going to lose clarity. And I don't think they'll lose clarity. I think they'll gain.
So have you ever watched Ivan's possession games videos?
Mm-hmm.
So like he talks a lot about playing with the dogs and stuff like that, right? And it's about how they play with each other and how he in turn plays with them. And I kind of look at like the way I do my bite work is very much like that. You know, I'm playing a game with my dog. You know, I do it because I like doing it and it's fun. You know, so
yeah, and if you guys both enjoy it, then hell yeah, you know, that fits your goals and that fits your needs and it helps your relationship, then hell yeah. Myself personally, it would definitely hurt my relationship with this dude if he built that. So I'm not going to put it in there. I like that he bites everyone else but me. So.
I think he would bite you and like it, and you would like it too.
Yeah, but that's a fear, right?
No, I don't think it should be a fear.
It comes down to those pathways because real life scenarios, we can't account for the adrenaline that they're going to be feeling in that heightened state of arousal. So I don't want the pathway to ever be that he bites me. I don't want him to ever see me as an opponent. And I don't want him to ever see bite work as a game. So those things just don't align for my goals.
So can you describe a scenario where you think that could happen where he could potentially turn around and bite you?
So just like we were talking about where we see it in law enforcement happen pretty frequently, I guess I shouldn't say pretty frequently, but the biggest examples, most frequent examples that I've seen in law enforcement is you send your dog on a live suspect, dog gets a live bite. So we're talking, let's say first time ever on a live bite. I personally owned a dog that I know was worked by his handler, and I'm not going to name names on here because I don't want that drama, but I personally handled a dog that was decoyed by his handler and then sold to a law enforcement agency and then was given to me. And this dog was given to me because he turned around and bit his handler. And the dog had a lot of lack of clarity in other areas. But where we see it happen is the dog is sent for their first ever live bite. They're on a live bite. They're feeling real muscle fibers flex underneath in their mouth. They're feeling the taste of what real blood feels like. They're hearing real screams, a real scream and the scream that your decoys are giving. They're not always the exact same, right? From a real human scream being bit by a dog. That's not a pain that anyone ever wants to feel, especially not on a bicep and not how these dogs bite. So in that moment, your dog is at such a heightened state of arousal. We're not verbally outing dogs in these scenarios because we won't go too far into this, but it becomes a liability. That's why you don't see a lot of agencies that are verbally outing their dog. Majority of the time, they subdue the suspect, and then they're physically pulling their dog off of the bite. And that's, again, for liability because if the dog rebites or has a dirty bite, now we could get sued. So we have to think about that. So we pull the dog off of the bite. The dog is frustrated, and it has all these new feelings because this is a whole new level of adrenaline that they're feeling. So they don't know who it is that's around them, right? It's so much going on. It's such a heightened state of arousal. They turn around and they bite you because that's just the pathways that have been built. No,
what you're describing is bad training and bad handling. The dog didn't do that. The dog didn't turn and bite the guy because he had done bite work with his dog. You're making connections that aren't there, right? I think the dog turned around and bit the handler because the handler wasn't handling the dog appropriately, and the handler set the dog up for failure. Because you'd already said because clarity wasn't already there. If clarity was there, it wouldn't have happened. If the training was good, it wouldn't have happened. If the handling was good, it wouldn't have happened.
Correct. I agree with you if the training was good, but that's where I'm saying that bad training came into play, right? I think the dog lost a lot of clarity
but that's not
because it was a serious game for them to fight against their handler because they were being built as a law enforcement dog. And I know how this dog was specifically trained because I know the person, so I can speak on it. But at the end of the day, the dog has built the pathways of getting out of pressure. It's just like when you show a dog a tug, they immediately want to bite the tug after they've bitten it 100 times, right?
You're taking it out of context.
I don't agree.
Like a dog that works on, like, let's say I've got a young dog that I'm going to train up to be a police dog, right? I can put the suit on and I can work all the things working technique with that dog. Now, when it comes time to do like civil work or serious real work, I don't do that on that dog, right? I have somebody else do that to that dog, right? But I can still teach all those techniques with that dog. Me
personally, I wouldn't put a dog like that. I wouldn't put a dog that has a known history of biting his handler, or that has a history of bite work being fun when it's a person in a suit, bite work is a game. I guess fun is a bad term because it's always fun for them.
Competition Canine has a good question. If it's not a game, how is it fun for the dog? So if it's not fun for the dog, what keeps the dog motivated to want to keep doing it and not quit?
I think that's where we're talking predatory aggression. So it's just like, is it a game for
predatory aggression
for a hog dog? Is it a game for a hog dog, or is it a serious fight?
So
right, prey drive isn't necessarily a game.
Okay, well, I can answer. So even though all right, I got distracted with the hog dog stuff.
Sorry.
You said you don't ever want the dog to think it's a game.
Bite work with a person in a suit is what we're speaking. Okay. Like when a person is involved in the bite, yes.
So if it's always for real, right? How does the dog win?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
How does the dog feel like he got out of there kicking that dude's ass? If it's always supposed to be about the man and about like really doing harm, and when he's not able to do those harm.
So we're always going to leave the man as prey. So we're never going to have the dog. So I think that's where we have some confusion, right? So when I'm pulling a dog off of its decoy, when he's in a fight, the fight with the dog, I'm pulling him off. My decoy is still going to be teasing them and acting as the prey again, because we're going to tap back into that prey drive to bring that prey drive back out. We want to leave them frustrated. And I'm speaking specifically in a building phase as opposed to a quote unquote finished dog, right?
So I think that I'm getting tired. It's late.
It is late for you. I'm sorry. It's like 7:30 for me. It's my dinner time.
Yeah. So I think the dog has to feel like it's going to win the fight, right? In order for it to want to keep going. You know what I mean? And we build that through prey and predatory aggression, right? And I understand that when shit gets real. But I still don't understand how you make the connection of handler. I can understand if a handler's working a dog and it's shit work, right? It's just not good work. It's not clear.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's people that are amazing at it, right?
And then that pathway, or how you say it, is a pathway of the dog goes, well, hey, I can tag you and you'll leave me the fuck alone, right? Because I've seen dogs like that, but dogs like that, in my opinion, are weak, right? They don't have good, strong nerves or clear heads. But it's also, if you train it properly.
Who is this Raymond person? Because that doesn't even make sense. This person is just irritating. If you get punched in the face every time you walk in a bar, you'd stop going to that bar. Yeah, no one's saying that you wouldn't. That doesn't make sense.
No, I think what he's saying there is like, if every time you walk into a bar, you're in a fight for real, you're going to quit going to that bar.
Depending on how you're raised, right? There are some people who always are just built for a fight and they're always looking for a fight.
No, I think that given enough repetitions, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I kind of agree with kind of that a little bit, because like, yeah, you walk into a bar enough times and you get your ass kicked or you get punched in the face every time.
There 3 times, you get punched in the face. The 4th time I walk in there, I'm ready to throw hands, right? So that's myself. I'm going to come back with more aggression. I'm not just going to let myself, I mean, the first time someone punches me in the face, I'm coming back at them because I'm confident in my ability to overcome my opponent. But that's why you build such strong foundations with these dogs when they're young in their ability to overcome their opponent. What did you say?
What if you get beat up? Yeah, you're going to go in there that 4th time.
I'm not putting my dog on decoys that are going to do that, right? You're talking about breaking a dog down, and I'm talking about building a dog up. We're not here to break dogs down. So no, I'm never going to put my dog in that situation where he's feeling like he's at a total loss. I don't know why that's a scenario we're even discussing, because why would either one of us want to do that? That would be breaking our dog down.
How does the dog know that he won? I understand, like, after you pull him off the bike, there's frustration.
But in the fight, when they're countering against that pressure, they're winning because they're getting that muscle flexion, right? That's what they're looking for. They want that muscle flexion like it would be real prey. That's why when the dog counters, we're moving so that they feel that. We're making noise. We're moving backwards. We're relieving any sort of pressure that we're putting on them, whether that's we're staring them down, we're looking away, right? We're giving them those things that make them realize that they can manipulate their opponent by countering through those.
But relieving pressure or counting pressure, I don't think is winning.
I think that it's just like in a jiu-jitsu tournament. If I take you down, I haven't won the match, but I am winning. Does that mean you can't counter against me? No. But am I still winning? Yes. Do I still feel a level of success because I've been able to take you down and overpower you? Yes. So it just amplifies the sense of your building and power.
I understand how that could build confidence, right? You grow for an arm bar and you sink it, right? You win, right? The person tapped out. What if the person never taps out? What if you're never able to finish the person?
And that's not someone I would ever work with, because they're not here to build a dog. They're just here to break them down, right? Because you're in a suit. It's not a fair game. I understand
you would never do that because you advocate for your dog, right?
Exactly. So I don't know why
my argument is that
advocate for breaking down dogs, right?
My argument is that the logic is flawed in that, like thinking that your dogs have to take it serious or for real every time.
I think that it's naive to think that dogs are oblivious to a fight. I think that's really naive. I think that, yeah, there's a way to train so that it's always play for your dog. And I don't think that that's conflict free, because you have conflict in play. If your dog doesn't out on a tug and you have to provide a correction, there's conflict there, right? Now, does the good relationship outweigh the bad? Yes, but there's still going to be a level of conflict. But you're not respecting the abilities of your dog if you're thinking they can't recognize that when they're in a real fight, right? I think that that's something that they should be able to recognize, and they're not just oblivious to a fight and biting down because it's fun. Because if someone has the intent to hurt them, they understand that this isn't fun anymore. The pressure's not going away just because I rebite, which is why with our protection and law enforcement dogs, we never have them lose, right? We make sure that we set them up in situations where they're always going to be winning and always left wanting more and always frustrated. Our dogs are not working every day. We don't want them working fights every day. We want that level of frustration built up, right? I hear a lot with sport trainers working their own dogs that one of the reasons is they can get more reps in. And I think that's one thing that we do differ in for personal protection versus sport protection, law enforcement. It's not about the number of reps we get. It's about the quality of reps that we get. So with my dogs, I don't need them to see the same picture 100 times, because every time they've seen these pictures, they've won and they've felt like a champion, right? Because you make sure that they are beating up on these guys and they're respecting when the dog is countering and behaving appropriately.
So Jess says she would argue that the best dogs don't care and just clamp down because it's fun and are oblivious to any fight. And I would agree with her, especially with her dog that she has, Badger.
But we're talking sport.
Well,
right?
it doesn't
We're not
matter if that
talking him
dog's.
in a live. You think if someone is stabbing him with a knife, he thinks that's a game? That
I
it's
don't
fun?
think he'll. I think he'll be oblivious to it.
Not because it's fun.
No,
Because of prey drive.
I do. I think he'll be like, this is the funnest thing in the world. I get to bite somebody for real.
Does he
and
get a
it's
dopamine
juicy.
rush? Yes.
Yeah.
But is it all, if he's being stabbed, I don't think that you can say that that's coming from a place of fun, because no one
I think
enjoys
he would.
being stabbed.
I think he would be oblivious and wouldn't recognize that anybody was stabbing him at all. He would be so focused and enjoying just the bite, just satisfying himself on just the bite, that he wouldn't know anybody was stabbing him. Just like he doesn't know anybody's hitting him with a stick.
I just don't think that comes from a place of happy-go-lucky fun. I think dogs, yes, experience a dopamine rush when they're biting and they're in those scenarios, but I don't think that it's happy-go-lucky fun, like when it's a stress-free tug play session in your backyard, right? Because it's not stress-free.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you from experience, right?
Oh,
Really,
thank you,
really good
endorphin rush.
dogs do not, they don't even recognize the fight is just a distraction. They don't care. It's like that doesn't exist. Anything behind their mouth doesn't exist. They're just fighting. You can hit them with a rock. They don't care. They don't recognize it. You can stab them. You can gut them. They don't care. They're not paying any attention to that. And that's all just, they would still like it, right? They don't need to feel that way every time. And whatever pressure you put on the dog, it doesn't matter if it's a good dog.
Yeah, and I think where we differ is the thought that a dog is always going to be in prey drive. And I think that dogs, my personal opinion is that dogs are cycling through lots of different drives within seconds. Yeah, I'd love to come train. I think you guys are a little far away, but I'd love to when I can make it out that way for sure. And it's great that your dogs think it's fun, right? That's your goal, is for it to be a game for your dog. And so that's wonderful. You're achieving your goals. That's not my personal goal. So that's not right.
I get that.
That's just my personal thought process on it. But I do enjoy the discussion that we have on it. But my opinion's not going to change, and I'm never going to want to catch my own dog.
Yeah. I mean, if your dog's not, if it's not cool with your dog doing that, then it's not cool with your dog. Although I see a very happy, fun, sporty dog you have there. I think you should take it out and do some sport stuff with it. You could probably do really well.
I could do really well, but he hasn't been raised as a sport dog. He hasn't been raised to be equipment fixated. He's been raised to be a personal protection dog, right? And I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair for you to just say, because you see 15-second clips that I put online of my puppy doing bite work, that he's a sport dog. Just because he enjoys the work doesn't mean that it's a game for him either, right?
I think it is.
It's my personal protection, but I don't.
He might take that game seriously.
Here's the thing: is you've never met my dog, but I promise you, you stand in front of my dog, he's going to light up on you, and it's not going to be a game.
Let's see. I'll come out.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's set something up. I can come out in the fall.
Well, yeah, let's get something set up. I should have some availability in the fall. And it's cooler. You don't want to come.
I know.
Yeah,
I don't want to come while it's 180
don't come
degrees.
before like October, honestly, because when I did bite work today, we did it at 9 a.m. and yo, it was so hot, like so flipping hot. Would you catch your dog if it were raised and trained to be equipment oriented? No, personally, I wouldn't. But again, my opinion is that it creates additional conflict. I don't see that it would gain me anything that I can't gain in tug play. Because if it's the same, if you're saying that the suit is the same as a tug, then for me, I would just prefer to use a tug with my dog, because I do see that there can be some conflict and confusion. And I would like to provide a lot of clarity to my dog. Also, I am not a good enough decoy to decoy for my dog. I am a very green decoy. I think that it would just be egotistical of me to catch my dog just to prove that I can catch my dog. That's not in my dog's best interest. My dog works with very amazing decoys who are great at building dogs, who can do a much better job than I can with backyard bite work here, unsupervised. So I'd rather put him in situations where I know he's going to improve and get great reps again, because it's not about, if I want to decoy and catch a dog, I got plenty of dogs that I can catch out at my trainers, right? But I don't need to be catching my own dog. He can be working with better decoys than me. I want him to always be working with someone better than me. I'm never the best in the room. There's so many better people out there than me. Why would I limit his thresholds by making him have to stick with me?
Well, I look at it like it's no different than playing with my dog. So if we can agree that...
I think that's really unfair. I've been very open to this entire conversation. Just because I haven't said, oh, my train of thought and I'm touching your suit. No, I'm going to do it.
No, I'm not saying that you should.
No, you're not saying that, but your friend is. And I don't think that that's fair to say, because I've been very open, and you're being very close-minded in the fact that we don't have the same goals. You want your dog to see this as a game, and I don't. So we train differently, and that's okay to train differently. It's okay to have different viewpoints. I'm being very open and hearing how it applies to you. But again, if our end goals are not the same, and I don't think that that's going to be beneficial to my dog and my relationship, none of you have met my dog in person. None of you have worked my dog in person. You see the highlights that I post on TikTok, and they're highlights, right? Every dog has faults. So that is not fair to say, because I'm advocating for my dog and putting his best interest before my ego. Because I could easily say I could catch my dog with a suit and work my dog. Would it be shit work? Yes. Is that in the best interest of my dog? Absolutely fucking not. So you can fuck off. I'm sorry. I'm so fed up with that. I've been nothing but open throughout this entire conversation. We've had great dialogue. But just because I'm not going to ditch my own train of thought to adopt yours does not mean that I'm not open-minded.
I don't think it's about changing what you do as much as it would be like just accepting or acknowledging to some people at least that working your own dog isn't bad. And that's kind of what started the whole...
Dependent on the decoy, right?
Well, I know, but that's what started the whole conversation, right?
No, and I think that I've said that numerous times, right? You work your dog and it works for you, and that's great. I don't think that works for everybody. And again, like we talked about previously, I don't think green decoys should work green dogs. It's just not really a great combination, especially unsupervised. But I think that it's all dog dependent, it's person dependent, it's decoy dependent. You have to be a skilled handler, a very skilled decoy, and have a very confident and stable dog and clear-headed dog to be able to do all of that. So safely and reliably. But in my opinion, and I think that that's great that that's how you guys are doing it and that works for you. Me personally, our goals again are not the same. Our disciplines are not the same, and our end goal is not the same. So it just doesn't align with my goals, and so it doesn't align with my training style, right?
I get that.
But it's fair. If it works for you, that's great. You're having great success. You just got a Mondio Ring 3. Like, it's obviously working well for you, and that's awesome.
It works for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people believe that, working their dogs and playing with their dogs helps build a relationship, and it doesn't create any conflict within the relationship. And those dogs can still be dogs that will bite for real in real situations. I think a weak dog is always going to be a weak dog, regardless 100%. Of what venue you put it in or how you train that dog, right? 100%. And if the dog isn't clear-headed or the training's bad, well then, there's going to be issues, right? Because that's what happens when you're not clear when you're training. You run across issues and speed bumps. Right.
Yeah, and and like Carrie's saying, like a lot of the personal protection trainers I work with, well, first off, you use a lot of different decoys because it's good for them to see a lot of different pictures, especially when you're dealing with law enforcement and personal protection. You want them to see all those different decoys and hear the different reactions. But that being said, we have a lot of success not working our own dogs and not putting ourselves in a suit. And I've seen the fallout from that side of it too. I'm not putting a suit on because I'm afraid. It has nothing to do with being afraid. It has to do with bettering my relationship and bettering my dog. Me putting a suit on to decoy my dog would be egotistical and because I'm impatient. It has nothing to do with bettering my dog.
So I think statements like that are,
because me getting in a suit and taking bites from him is not going to make him a better dog. It's going to be difficult because I don't know what I'm doing. So it wouldn't be good for him.
No, and that's okay and that's fair. So don't worry about the other stuff, right? So I have a question. What is your definition of a decoy? Because like, I want to understand like what you mean when you say the word decoy and what you think a decoy is.
It's a simple question, but I feel like it's tough to answer, right? So there's two sides of it. I think you can have decoys who are capable of mechanically catching a dog. And I think you'll see that sometimes with newer decoys in sport. Are they fully capable of catching a dog? Yes. Do they know the mechanics of a face attack? Yes. So they know those mechanics, they know those steps and movements, right? They can safely catch a dog. But what I consider myself, what I look for in a decoy at least, is someone that can read a dog and really build a dog and understand the implications that can happen when we try X technique. Like, what are the positives that can happen? What are the negatives? And do you understand how to overcome those negatives if that's what occurs? Do we have a plan? Like, I work personally with decoys who are experienced in building dogs and also are great at catching dogs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so for me, a decoy is not just a body in the suit who can catch a dog. A decoy is the second part of what you described. That first part to me is not a decoy, that's just a warm body in a suit.
Right.
So when I hear the term green decoy, I think of the person who only knows how to catch a dog in the suit. They don't know how to build a dog, right?
They're focusing on their own mechanics still and not able to just like focus solely on the dog, right?
Of course. So when we use the term decoy, we got to be careful, I think, sometimes about how we use that word. I know especially in a lot of the police circles that I used to work with, they just throw any idiot, usually the rookie, in a suit and go, all right, run, or go hide in the woods or some shit, right?
Trying to change that. Okay.
And because of that, there would be issues created because of lack of clarity and bad training, right? When I started working with these departments and they brought me on, I was able to show them why they shouldn't be doing those things, right? And I was able to show them how to build the dogs and stuff like that. And some of them were like, all right, yeah, okay, we see the error of our way. Maybe we can do better.
Piper Seifert, really quickly, I have acknowledged many times that how they train is okay because it works for them. So shut the fuck up. And it's interesting because, man, I low-key realizing that this is your whole club, I feel kind of outnumbered here. Like,
this isn't my club. I don't even know. I know who some of these people are, but nobody here's from my club.
Oh, okay. It sounds like people that you've worked with, or they all at least work together, which seems a little.
I've been doing this a long time. A lot of people know me.
Yeah, because I think that's again pretty unfair. Because I've said numerous times, if it works for you, then do it, right? But just because I'm not saying that that's not an idea I'm going to adopt,
so
doesn't mean it doesn't
Carrie
work.
asked a question. Carrie asked a question. Do I think, or do we? Damn it, scrolling. Do I think there are benefits for a finished dog working on a green decoy? Absolutely. I think young decoys, people who are learning to be decoys, should be practicing on older retired dogs. You don't want to risk. You don't want to risk necessarily somebody doing something that they shouldn't have done or moving in a way they shouldn't have moved that creates injury or psychological issues with the dog. So, so usually if you have a finished dog, then that dog's seen just about every picture you can throw at it. So it doesn't matter what the new decoy is doing. And typically, if you're a new decoy, you're under supervision of somebody with a lot of experience. So like when somebody comes to me to learn how to decoy, I may not always put them on an old finished dog. I may put them on a younger dog, depending on what we're doing, right?
Right.
If I'm just like, if I just want them to be able to know what it feels like having a dog bite them in the leg so that they can figure out how to still move, then I can do that with the young dog as long as I'm right there to go, hey, don't fuck with the dog's head and try to make him scared or any shit like that.
You're coaching them through it, right?
Yeah, like I'm right there, right? But then on the older dogs, I can be like, once I know they can catch a dog without hurting the dog, I'm like,
He'll teach you everything you need to know.
skill points.
Yeah, exactly.
Do the thing,
Exactly.
So, well, hey, it was great talking to you, but it's really late here and I've got to get to bed.
I'm sorry it's so late. We should do this again though, but I really appreciate it.
It was fun. Thanks. I don't know how to end this thing. I'm going to try to hit a button. We'll see you.
Bye.